Let's start about talking about James Miller. We Thank you, buddy. Thank you for your contribution. So we're going to talk about James Miller. So if anybody hasn't seen it, unfortunately, I'm going to get better at this streaming thing, and I'll get to where I can show you sort of graphics and things like that. But I don't have the actual tweets that he posted. But basically, what happened was there was a discussion going on about the use broadly of LLMs, of chatbots and ChatGPT in putting together academic work. And there were a handful of people, including this guy, James D. Miller, who came in and said, essentially, the argument was, well, people make mistakes in their citations. Academics make mistakes in their citations all the time. So why is it a big deal if an LLM makes something up? And this guy, James Miller, even said, well, it's not that bad if if an LLM hallucinates a source because people will notice that it's fake and just ignore it, which is a crazy thing to say. The other fascinating thing about what James Miller was saying with this stuff was he sort of said, well, and he used very careful language. He said, a professor supervising 20 graduate students, don't you think it's okay if they're only 99% sure that the citations in those student papers, that their names are also on as authors? Don't you think 99% accuracy is enough? Right. And of course, the answer is no. These are supposed to be, rigorous memorializations of the creation of knowledge. So obviously, I, as a PhD holder and former academic with a lot of academic publications, take this pretty personally. I spent a lot of time getting the citations right in the in the publications that I had. My last one, by the way, was in 2014, and here's where things get really interesting when you start looking at James D. Miller. So Miller is a professor at Smith College, which is a small private women's, and I believe still women's only liberal arts college in the Northeast. It's associated with some. I think it's one of the Seven Sisters. One of these are sort of Ivy League adjacent. However, when you look at James Miller's CV, and this is where things start to get insane. So Miller is, and this is why it's so important, is because Miller is part of the sort of rationalist and long-termist movement. He writes a lot about what happens when AI turns us all into paper clips, right? He talks a lot about, or he writes a lot about long-termist ideas, and he has published in recent years almost exclusively in these like rationalist, long-termist journals with names like Future, and places that are funded by effective altruists and rationalists, which means that these are not real peer-reviewed actual academic publications. They're sort of privately funded journals that don't go through the standard process. This means that James Miller, who is opining on the standards of peer review, has not published a peer-reviewed paper that would be recognized by most academics since 2011. This means that I have published an actual peer-reviewed article more recently than James Miller, and then had an entire journalism career. And this guy is telling us how we should be thinking about citations. So that's step one. That's just the most obvious part. Second obvious part. Smith College does not have a PhD program in economics. This means that when James Miller says, well, some guy who is supervising 20 grad students and he's putting his name on all of their papers, he can't be expected to check the accuracy of all those citations, right? This sort of, he used very careful language. He didn't say, I am supervising 20 people. He implied that he was supervising 20 people, but he didn't actually say it, which is, awesome liar behavior. Once you're a liar, you get used to it. He doesn't have grad students, as far as we would know. Apparently, you can go to UMass and be supervised by somebody from Smith. So maybe he has grad students at UMass that we don't know about. But there is no PhD program at Smith College. And given the reviews that he gets on his 101 undergrad courses, it seems unlikely that he has a lot of advisees at UMass secretly. So he's lying twice there, right? Sort of by omission and allusion. But he's misrepresenting himself quite directly. Now, here's where things get super crazy, frankly. which is, as I mentioned, most of his publications since 2011 have been in this kind of rationalist space. The one exception, or at least what looks like an exception, is that he co-authored a 50-page like debate slash pamphlet in 2016 with a guy whose pseudonym might ring a bell. He co-authored slash debated with this guy named Vox Day, Voxday. If anybody in the chat wants to chime in about who Vox Day is, go for it. Vox Day is best known. Oh, hi, Steve, sneaking behind me again. Vox Day is best known for having spearheaded what was known as the Sad Puppies movement in the Hugo Awards circa 2015 and 2016. The Sad Puppies, subsequently known as the Rabid Puppies, were an effort to manipulate the voting for the Hugo Award to basically make sure that Black people, specifically N.K. Jemisin, did not win a Hugo Award as part of a movement to argue that the Hugo Awards had, in the language we would use now, gone too woke. So Vox Day was leading the charge to make sure that science fiction still represented the far rightest of the most far right sentiments that, you would expect from maybe somebody like Robert Heinlein, perhaps. So Vox Day represented this movement to try and sort of retrench the conservative tendencies within science fiction to people who would basically support fascism. Now, it doesn't end there. Vox Day then subsequently went on to play a role in fomenting Gamergate. Some of you, hopefully people will remember what Gamergate was. Gamergate then, of course, became the foundation for the fucking entire alt-right, for the Trump movement, for the University of Virginia Unite the Right rally that basically normalized fascism that we experience every day now. This is a guy teaching at Smith College who co-authored a book. Pizzagate absolutely was one of the feeds into Pizzagate. This is a guy who co-authored, and by the way, Vox Day is not just anti-feminist. He is, of course, because intersectionality, he's a white supremacist. So this is a guy who teaches at Smith College, very liberal college, mostly women students. I wonder if they know he's a closet white supremacist, which, by the way, when you co-author a book with a white supremacist, there are two white supremacists. Okay, let's be clear about that. You don't get a pass just because you're not actively advocating for this stuff yourself. You're co-signing it. And by the way, he has, again, another kind of interesting note here. James Miller has been teaching at Smith since 1997. He's been just 30 years at one place, which is what you could do in the 90s when the academic job market was a lot better than it is now. And this is frankly something that I observed quite a lot in my own time in academia, which is that the older these professors were, the less they gave a fuck. They were lazy people. They were not intellectually engaged, and they were taking up spaces for younger academics who really wanted those jobs and actually would have produced more interesting work than these people who were sitting on their ass with tenure. So that's James D. Miller. He is an AI believer, a far right fellow traveler who has co-authored a book with a white supremacist who believes that having LLM hallucinations in the academic citations of your papers is fine. This kind of puts the whole picture out. And this is why I think this guy is such an important figure, because A, he's incompetent and stupid. Incompetence and stupidity strongly correlate with these far right beliefs, which is, I'm failing. It must be somebody else's fault. Oh, it must be Black people's fault. That's where a lot of this stuff comes from. He is also an AI believer, as I've written about in. I have to do the plug for all of these videos. This is my book, Stealing the Future. It's backwards. I need a backwards one that'll show up right on video. This is all about why incompetence becomes covered up by far-right ideologies. Sam Bankman-Fried pivoted to the far right after he got caught stealing $11 billion. AI is also a sort of rationalism. Sorry, I'm doing these things live, so occasionally I screw up, but I can't figure out the next word. But AI is also deeply tied to this sense of your own incompetence. You are going to turn to AI if you can't actually do the work. James Miller exemplifies that. It's everything connected. Racism, AI, incompetence. all in this one guy. Also, we can talk about academic decline all you want. I have plenty to say about that. Maybe we'll save it for another time. I could continue rambling, but the goal was for this one to be short and sweet and to the point. And I saw a lot of people in here vibing with what I'm saying about this. And if you're just joining, I'm sorry you've missed most of the video. I'm actually going to wrap it up here, but I will be posting it very soon, and you'll get to check it out. These are crazy times, and we have let crazy people run wild. I don't say things like this very often, but this guy should have his tenure revoked. I'm sorry. Somebody needs to go through, look at whatever work he has published, find the bullshit, expose him. He's confessing to lying. He's confessing to academic fraud. He's confessing to a criminal mindset. That's what these people have. So I'm just going to end it up there before I go completely off the rails and accidentally defame somebody. But there you have it. James D. Miller, Smith College. Don't go to Smith College, by the way. They apparently hire complete fucking narcissistic boobs. Take care, everybody. Be safe.